The quiet, ambient hum of the high-end home office wraps around us like a protective cocoon of absolute competence, illuminated by the soft, cold glow of a large desktop screen displaying digital course modules and beautifully formatted curriculum syllabi. We sit within the plush embrace of an ergonomic leather chair, surrounded by an environment dominated by intellectual accumulation and meticulous aesthetic curation. On the walls behind us, a pristine alignment of physical certificates, framed degrees, and specialized training badges hangs in quiet testament to our dedication, their gold-embossed seals catching the dim, smart lighting of the room. This is a sanctuary built out of the pursuit of expertise, a room where every object declares that we are serious, we are qualified, and we are continually evolving. We are surrounded by thousands of pages of specialized literature, premium digital resource portals, and upcoming masterclass registrations. Everything in this immediate space demands that we maintain an impeccable trajectory of mental optimization, presenting ourselves to the marketplace as highly trained, endlessly certified, and thoroughly prepared for any operational crisis. Yet, if we close our digital tabs, sit back against the leather, and drop the laser of our attention deep into our own physical jaw and head, we are confronted with a state of severe, exhausting somatic imprisonment. We are not merely studying, we are managing a high-security intellectual vault. The temporomandibular joint and the massive masseter muscles of our jaw are locked into a permanent iron clench, grinding our teeth down in a silent, continuous expression of survival anxiety. There is a rigid, burning tension running up the long sternocleidomastoid muscles at the sides of our neck, anchoring themselves like steel cables into the mastoid process just behind our ears. Our eyes are dry, strained, and raw, suffering from the chronic friction of endless reading, locked into a hyper-focused, penetrating stare that tries to consume information as if it were oxygen. Above this ocular strain, our head cranes forward, pulled 2 inches ahead of our spine by the chronic contraction of the suboccipital muscles at the base of the skull, as if our brain were desperately trying to escape the heavy container of the body, to absorb one more sentence, one more framework, one more professional methodology. We have become highly sophisticated, exhausted examples of the hoarder of specialized certifications. We live under the absolute, unexamined tyranny of a culture that has transformed personal development and educational accumulation into an aggressive defense mechanism, confusing our continuous cognitive hoarding with genuine human evolution. We no longer trust our innate intelligence, we trust institutional validation. We treat every raw intuition, every spontaneous insight, and every instinctual response that rises within our consciousness not as a valid expression of our primary authority, but as a dangerous, unpedigreed liability that must be cross-referenced, verified, and backed by a certified methodology before it can be offered to the world. We have transformed our intellect into a perpetual student engine, an internal bureaucracy that spends every waking hour collecting letters after our name, using the accumulation of expert status as a heavy intellectual shield to completely avoid the terrifying, naked vulnerability of simple, unadorned existence. Let us look beneath the elegant surface of our impressive resumes and examine the raw, terrifying truth of this mental hoarding. Why do we feel a sudden surge of cold panic whenever we are asked to step out of the classroom and offer our unvarnished presence to a client, a project, or a relationship? Why does the prospect of stepping onto a stage without a specialized framework, a multi-step blueprint, or an institutional credential strike our nervous system with the force of an existential execution? It is because we are operating under a deep visceral terror of being exposed as inadequate. We believe, with a fierce muscular conviction, that our inherent and certified self is fundamentally hollow, unqualified, and broken. We are terrified that if we drop our guard for even a single presentation, If we let our jaw relax, let our head pull back into alignment with the spine, and let our presence speak from the raw, unsighted truth of our immediate awareness, the world will instantly see through our credentials and reveal us as an imposter. We fear that the moment our frameworks slip, we will be cast out of the sanctuary of professional respect and left to drown in the cold dark of irrelevance. This chronic habit of cognitive hoarding creates a profound, invisible exile within our own flesh. We have become entirely top-heavy, living our lives exclusively from the narrow, frantic vault that sits inside our skulls and behind our eyes. We have severed our consciousness from the deep, warm, and instinctual intelligence of our lower body, treating our chests, our bellies, and our legs as mere support systems designed to transport our over-credentialed brains from one seminar to the next. When a real-world demand lands in our career or our relational world, when a crisis erupted that cannot be solved by a textbook model or a 5-step protocol, our body registers the event as a raw, physical wave of urgency moving through our tissue. But before we can even taste the flavor of that wave, before we can access the spontaneous, wild intelligence of our immediate survival instincts, our internal hoarder intercepts the phenomenon. It immediately wraps the raw biological challenge in a thick, dense layer of specialized concepts, certification pathways, and definitions, turning a living moment of human action into a bloodless academic problem that requires another course to solve. Consider the immense, unsustainable energetic cost of maintaining this perpetual student machinery. The human mind was never designed to act as a continuous archive of institutional checklists. By constantly collecting certifications and tracking our compliance with external methodologies, we are running our cognitive processors at their absolute thermal limit day after day, year after year. This permanent state of preparation prevents us from ever truly entering the battlefield of our lives. When we are engaged in an active project or a deep relational interaction, we are only half present to the actual human reality unfolding before us. The other half of our intellect is locked in a frantic backstage library, cross-referencing our actions with the latest masterclass blueprint, auditing our vocabulary to ensure it matches the certified standard, and searching for the next training module to fix the feeling of groundlessness that we mistake for ignorance. We are hyper-qualified and hyper-articulate on paper, yet we are fundamentally absent from our own execution. We are like musicians who have spent decades studying the physics of sound and collecting the most elite certifications in music theory, yet who freeze in absolute terror when handed a simple wooden flute and asked to play a single unscripted melody from the heart. We tell ourselves that this relentless pursuit of certifications is a proof of our high integrity, our deep humility, and our commitment to professional excellence. We look at our growing list of credentials, our expensive training hours, and our neat rows of frames, and we label it as continuous self-actualization or lifelong learning. We enter our industries and our relationships with our internal hoarding engines running at full capacity, using our specialized vocabularies as a new, highly sophisticated form of armor to protect our raw, bleeding vulnerability from being encountered by the raw, chaotic currents of life. We have internalized the rules of the credentialed marketplace so deeply that we measure our value entirely by the length of our pedigree, proud of how safe, how structured, and how thoroughly approved our intellectual display case appears to the world. But this over-credentialed display is a museum of dead templates, a sterile fortress built out of our fear of our own naked authority. True wisdom is never the accumulated weight of someone else's frameworks. It is the radical, undefended willingness to trust the uncalculating intelligence of your immediate awareness. When we use our certifications to validate our existence, we are performing an act of deep hidden violence against our own primary nature. We are telling our spontaneous, intuitive, and animal self that its native voice is fundamentally untrustworthy, illegitimate, and unfit for public viewing unless it is stamped by an institution. We freeze our raw creative fire beneath an icy crust of specialized credentials, completely blind to the fact that by filtering our presence through an endless sequence of prerequisites, we are filtering out our capacity to experience a genuine, uncalculated moment of raw impact, breakthrough innovation, or deep, soul-level power. Let us pause for a single heartbeat, allowing the cool, heavy weight of this diagnostic reality to sink straight through the layers of our credentialed defenses. Notice what happens to your jaw and your neck in this exact moment as you confront the reality of your own internal hoarding engine. Can you detect the subtle, instinctive tightening that occurs at the root of your ears? Can you feel the immediate frantic desire of the mind to formulate an intellectual concept about this paragraph, trying to use its analytical agility to transform this unmasking into a new framework for self-improvement? That is the hyper-vigilant hoarder trying to coop this text, trying to turn this confrontation into a new methodology to be mastered and checked off your list. It cannot tolerate a moment of simple, non-verbal contact with its own internal dryness. It wants to cross this page off its list, file it away as an intellectual realization, and look for the next course registration button. The path out of this performative vault begins not by acquiring a more authentic certification in mindfulness or somatic integration, but by having the radical, terrifying courage to let the entire scaffolding of your credentials collapse into absolute silence right where you are sitting. It is the willingness to look into the unpredictable, unscripted void of your immediate presence and to realize that you do not need an institutional permit to be safe. We must learn how to let the iron clench of our jaw drop open, how to let our head pull back into the heavy ballast of the spine, and how to allow the raw, uncertified current of our original awareness to touch the room without a single pedigree or a single citation. We must step out of the classroom of our social expectations, drop our anchors into the clear water of our non-reflective witness, and realize that our true authority in this world has never depended on our ability to accumulate framed paper, but has always resided in our willingness to offer our raw, unvarnished, and beautifully naked presence to the world. To trace the precise biological infrastructure of this intellectual hoarding, we must dissect the inner mechanics of our credentialed vault with the cold, diagnostic precision of an engineer exposing a fatal stress fracture in an urban tower. Let us look at how the physical machine of our body adapts to serve the dictates of this permanent academic preparation, freezing our muscle fibers into an apparatus of continuous self-suspension. When our fundamental right to act is held hostage by the acquisition of the next training badge, the mammalian organism cannot risk the raw, spontaneous eruption of its own original authority. Allowing the hands to build without a textbook model, permitting the lungs to expand with the untamed weight of our immediate intuitive voice, is viewed by the intellect as a direct invitation to professional execution. And so the mind erects a heavy, calcified barrier at the exact junction where our interior instinct attempts to cross over into external action, staging a permanent blockade within our skeletal frame to trap our uncertified reality before it can expose our nakedness to the marketplace. This defensive architecture carves a highly specific, suffocating geometry into our tissue, a state we can fully examine through the image of the rusted hinge on the open gate. Let us contemplate this inner landscape. The gateway to our true instinctual authority, our raw creative power, and our native life force has actually been standing wide open, unlocked, and entirely clear since the day we were born. The courtyard of the present hour requires no entry fee, no institutional permit, and no specialized letters after our name to be fully occupied. But when we live as a hoarder of specialized certifications, Our intellect looks out toward this vast, unscripted terrain and feels an overwhelming surge of primitive panic. It looks at the wide horizon of action and sees only the terrifying lack of an institutional map, the absence of a step-by-step checklist, and the risk of making an unvetted mistake. To avoid crossing this open threshold into the wild air of vulnerability, the mind fixates its entire attention onto the rusted hinge of the gate structure itself. It treats the mechanism of preparation, the prerequisites, the syllabi, the methodology modules, and the accreditation criterias a permanent, exhausting project that must be mastered before a single step can be taken. We spend our vital life force oiling, analyzing, and intellectualizing the hinge, enrolling in one masterclass after another, convincing ourselves that we are performing the holy work of meticulous preparation. But we fail to see the systemic entrapment occurring within our bones. By remaining perpetually fixated on the structure of the gate, we are using the gate itself as a wall to block ourselves from ever entering the courtyard. The certifications are no longer bridges to action. They have become an elite form of procrastination, a sophisticated, socially celebrated fortress built to ensure that our raw, uncertified self never has to face the unfiltered judgment of reality. Let us track the physical calcification of this rusted hinge across the delicate muscles of our face, starting with the profound contraction of the temporomandibular joint and the ear root matrix. In an uninhibited, self-authorized human being, the jaw floats loosely within its fluid socket, dropping downward effortlessly to allow a deep, resonant sigh of satisfaction or widening to receive the raw sensory texture of the current hour. Within our over-credentialed engine, however, the jaw is held in a permanent, tight stranglehold by the massive masseter and temporalis muscles. We maintain a continuous defensive clench around the root of our teeth, pulling the lower jaw upward and backward with an icy force. This permanent locking acts as a physical containment field, ensuring that if an unexpected intuitive impulse surges through our body, it cannot burst out as an unpolished, raw declaration. It must first smash against this muscular vice, where it is instantly intercepted, suppressed, and delayed until we can find a textbook definition to justify its existence. We are locking our own mouth to ensure we never emit an uncertified opinion. This chronic extends upward and backward, manifesting as a severe, frozen tightening at the absolute root of the ears and the mastoid process. This region, where the skull meets the upper cervical vertebrae, is our primary biological vault-keeper, directly connected to our deepest survival networks of hypervigilance. When the hoarder software is running, the muscles at the base of the skull, specifically the rectus capitis and obliquus capitis groups, are pulled into a short, burning knot, caging the brainstem in a vice of permanent tension. This contraction creates a chronic forward crane of the head, forcing our eyes to remain locked in an aggressive near-vision strain as we scan screens and pages for more data. We have locked our suboccipital roots so tightly that the natural rhythmic rocking of the head upon the spine is completely paralyzed. Our head becomes a heavy, detached computer terminal that has forgotten the deep, fluid wisdom of the neck, moving only with a rigid, mechanical stiffness that seeks to absorb more institutional frameworks to soothe the burning sense of inadequacy that resides within our unmoving tissues. Look at how this academic filtration deforms the sensory apparatus of our eyes, freezing our visual field into a dry, predatory instrument of consumption. Because we believe that our safety is entirely dependent upon the volume of our accumulated information, our ocular energy is forced to operate with a chronic friction behind the corneas. We use our eyes like twin suction cups, dragging them across lines of text, digital modules, and lecture slides with a desperate, grasping velocity. This forward-projecting strain locks the ciliary muscles of the eyes into a permanent state of contraction, shrinking our peripheral awareness until the world outside the curriculum completely vanishes. We are looking at the library of life with an intense, consuming greed, rather than sitting back and allowing the uncredentialed beauty of the passing hour to rest inside our minds. We have turned our gaze into an information-gathering machine, an optical drill designed to hollow out concepts, completely destroying our ability to experience the panoramic, soft-focus relief of simple, uncalculating presence. Consider the profound, tragic delusion that allows us to celebrate this chronic state of physical paralysis as a supreme achievement of personal growth. We look at our collection of titles, our ability to cite 20 different psychological or operational frameworks in a single conversation, and our pristine compliance with institutional standards, and we frame it as dedication to excellence or spiritual maturity. We enter our professional circles and our marriages with our internal hoarding engines running at full capacity, using our mastery of specialized methodologies as an advanced form of intellectual armor to ensure we are never caught off guard, never seen as unpolished, and never exposed in our naked, trembling humanity. We have become the bloodless curators of a new, hyper-refined religion of institutional permission, worshipping the very rusted hinge that is starving our tissues of oxygen and turning our active life into an endless series of unpassed prerequisites. The ultimate tragedy of this credentialed hoarding is that the more titles we accumulate, the more deeply our internal sense of imposterhood hardens. The human soul possesses an innate, highly sensitive radar that can detect the difference between a person operating from their raw, instinctual authority and a person hiding behind a wall of borrowed frameworks within a single heartbeat. When we deliver our pristine, thoroughly certified methodologies to our clients or partners, their nervous systems do not feel met, they feel educated. They recognize, beneath the elegant vocabulary of our certifications, that they are not interacting with a real, sovereign, and self-authorized creature, but with an expensive library that refuses to step out from behind the textbook. They intuitively sense that our credentials are a form of control, an elite defensive strategy executed to keep them from seeing our raw, uncertified center, and so they withdraw their own raw trust from our presence, leaving us to inhabit a life that is academically flawless but completely hollow to the touch. A beautiful, climate-controlled classroom where two ghosts spend their lives exchanging immaculate citations. This brings us to the core realization that our hyper-vigilant hoarding is a manifestation of our deep ancestral resistance to the natural, chaotic rhythm of the living earth. We are running away from the messy, unpredictable, and fiercely uncertified reality of our intuitive nature, trying to replace the fluid movement of the open stream with the sterile concrete engineering of an institutional reservoir. We live under the permanent, exhausting illusion that if we can just acquire the next certification, if we can just pass the next exam and script our actions with absolute expert foresight, we can build a life where we are entirely immune to failure, immune to criticism, and immune to the raw pain of being seen as ordinary. But this immunity is the immunity of the vault. It is a safety purchased through the systematic murder of our spontaneity, our creative fire, and our capacity for wild, uncalculated execution. Let us stand quietly at the edge of this realization, allowing the heavy gold-plated armor of our degrees to drop to the floor for a moment. Feel the immediate, intense impact of this weight dropping upon your physical jaw and the base of your skull. Notice how the mind instantly enters a state of high-velocity panic, trying to find a clever loophole in this text, trying to use its analytical vocabulary to categorize this diagnosis as an interesting psychological theory to be discussed in a future seminar. That is the hoarder trying to rebuild the scaffolding before the open gate can force us into the courtyard. It cannot tolerate a moment of simple, non-verbal confrontation with its own internal dryness. It wants to cross this chapter off its list, turn it into a new strategy for self-improvement, and return to the library. But the way out of the intellectual vault is not a path of strategic correction, it is a path of radical, uncalculating demolition. It is the willingness to let the iron clench of your jaw snap under the raw pressure of your own uncertified voice, to let your polished reputation for expertise fail its daily inspection, and to allow the entire top-heavy architecture of your intellect to be drowned by the wild, muddy current of your original awareness. We must learn how to stop being the hypervigilant students of our presentation and learn how to become the wide, empty spaces in which our native authority can speak its own unpolished truth. We must drop our anchors so deep into the raw, unvetted terrain of our cells that we no longer require an institutional stamp to know that our existence possesses an absolute, unshakable right to act exactly as it is. Inhabit the raw, uncertified container of your frame right now within this exact room, beneath the unceasing pressure of your professional expectations. Do not try to fix your locked jaw. Do not attempt to melt your suboccipital contraction through an act of willpower. That would just be the censorship board launching a new enforcement protocol. Simply acknowledge the rusted hinge on your open gate with absolute, warm and non-judgmental intimacy. Say to your own biology, I see how hard you have been working to collect credentials to keep us safe. I see the immense exhausting burden of this continuous preparation. In that simple moment of uncalculating witnessing, the metal bars lose their defensive purpose. The jaw clench begins to find its slack. The heavy plate at the base of your skull drops its guard, and the deep, wild current of your primary attention begins its slow, natural migration away from the frantic vault behind your eyes, plunging down into the cold, ancient and unvetted depths of your lower body, returning to the only home that has ever been completely real. To break through this cognitive hoarding and dissolve the rusted hinge that has held our original execution hostage, we must stand directly at the edge of the operational abyss with an unyielding, radical honesty. When we peel back the layers of our contemporary professional fluency and look into the exact moment where our spontaneity is intercepted, we find ourselves confronting the first arrow of real-world demand, the raw, unpredictable sting of an imposter crisis. Whether it arrives as an unscripted client confrontation that ignores every textbook blueprint, a high-stakes project whose parameters change by the hour, or a raw, emotional interaction that cannot be managed by our certified methodologies, our nervous system registers this groundlessness as an immediate threat to our tribal survival. In a flash of autonomic panic, our internal hoarder fires a second arrow deep into our own jaw and suboccipital roots, the frantic, high-velocity mobilization of the accumulation engine. We go into a state of total mental hyperreflexivity, spinning dozens of parallel cognitive simulations, searching for the next masterclass, the next accreditation, or the next expert paradigm to restore our image of absolute competence. Let us unmask the core illusion that fuels this exhausting accumulation engine, the myth of the perfectly credentialed readiness. We operate under the muscular, hidden assumption that if we can just study long enough, collect enough letters after our name, and master every specialized framework with absolute academic foresight, we can engineer an execution that is completely free of failure, criticism, or personal exposure. We treat our professional lives as if they were predictable, institutional pathways, where every crisis can be successfully solved through the deployment of the right certified theory. We believe that if we present an unblemished, thoroughly accredited public credentials display, we will guarantee our permanent safety within the circle of marketplace respect. But when we apply the sharp, uncompromising scalpel of direct observation to our lived execution, this illusion of control completely shatters against the fluid, unmappable reality of a living world. A real crisis, An authentic creative breakthrough, or a profound human transformation, is not an academic case study to be managed from the safety of a desk. It is a vast, changing ecosystem, as wild and unpredictable as a sudden storm over an open ocean. The raw variables of the present hour are driven by an intricate web of cultural shifts, biological pressures, and uncalculating human dynamics that have absolutely nothing to do with our framed credentials. When we spend our vital life force trying to secure the next certification to prepare for life, we are playing a rigged game with a phantom opponent. We are trying to build a static stone fortress upon a flowing river, exhausting our intellects to maintain an artificial authority, while the current of reality sweeps past our prerequisites without asking our permission. The deep, structural suffering of our hypervigilant hoarding lies precisely in this refusal to match the fluid, uncalculating nature of real presence. We are treating a living, breathing project as a high-stakes academic defense, where every action must be backed by an institutional citation to protect us from judgment. When an impact hits our career, when a client expresses a sudden, messy dissatisfaction, or a project demands an innovative leap that no textbook has ever recorded, the hoarder software instantly interprets this friction as a catastrophic breach of safety. It demands that we freeze our immediate, raw, intuitive reactions and retreat into our cognitive vault to search for an accredited framework. But by retreating into that internal library, we commit the ultimate professional crime. We abandon the room. We leave our team, our clients, and our mission standing alone in their raw, vibrating operational storm while we hide behind the credentials desk of our intellect, polishing our resume and organizing our prerequisites. Look at the extraordinary, breathtaking relief that floods our organism when we finally see through the illusion of the perfect certification and let the perpetual student machinery collapse into absolute ruin. If we drop the exhausting arrogance of believing we must be certified experts before we are allowed to act, who is the one who is being threatened by an unscripted crisis or a moment of operational nakedness? The phantom student who sits behind our eyes, white-knuckled and desperate for institutional validation, completely evaporates into the open air. We realize that the polished, overqualified persona we have spent our entire lives accelerating and protecting is nothing more than a defensive fiction, a paper shield we have constructed out of our fear of our own raw, innate authority. The liberation of this collapse is an immense, physical uncoiling of an ancient tension deep within our temporomandibular joint and neck. When we abandon the need to be flawlessly credentialed, step out of the hyper-isolated tower of the collector and enter the wide, resonant arena of our shared human capability, we see that our clumsiness, our sudden doubts, our empty templates, and our uncertified intuitive leaps are not unique, shameful defects that we must hide behind a curtain of professional aesthetics. They are the universal, beautiful, and vibrant signatures of a living biology. We are no longer required to act as the bloodless librarians of institutional frameworks. We are finally allowed to be real, self-authorized human beings, rooted in the undeniable truth of our immediate experience. This brings us to the core understanding of how our top-heavy hoarding systematically starves our active life of genuine fulfillment. Every time we filter a spontaneous impulse through the rusted hinge of our intellect, we are performing a microscopic act of self-rejection. We are whispering to our own primitive undercurrents that they are too uneducated, too unaligned, or too illegitimate to be trusted. We force our raw vitality to undergo a continuous, humiliating security check before we allow it to touch the world. Over time, this chronic censorship board creates a profound state of internal starvation. Our jaw turns dry, our neck feels paralyzed, and our heart hardens into an echoless vault. Not because we lack talent or capability, but because we have refused to let our raw, uncertified waters gush through our hands without our own institutional supervision. The timeless wisdom of pristine awareness invites us into a radical, total reversal of this performative strategy, not by trying to act more authentically from our heads, but by having the courage to trust the uncalculating flow of our original, unvetted presence. To live from this spacious center means that we care deeply about our craft. We bring our highest intelligence to our industries, and we study with natural curiosity. But we do not require our presence to look expert or certified before we allow ourselves to inhabit it. We offer our raw, unmapped reality to the current moment, letting our choices carry the immediate, vibrating texture of our cells, and we let the chips fall exactly where they may. We understand that our true authority in this universe does not depend on our ability to accumulate framed paper, but resides in our radical willingness to be completely here, undefended, porous, and nakedly exposed to the friction of real action. Imagine the profound, velvety ease that opens up within your professional life when this shift occurs. When you stop demanding that your actions be perfectly backed by a certified methodology, your imposter syndrome transforms from a terrifying monster into a simple, transient wave of biological energy moving through your jaw. You no longer look at an unscripted crisis or an ambiguous market shift with eyes of panic. You look at them with the quiet hospitality of an open sky that understands it can host any weather pattern without losing its ground. You become capable of meeting your industry with a spontaneous, vibrant, and contagious immediacy that shatters the performance of compliance. If you feel a sudden, sharp, intuitive leap rising in your chest, you let it manifest, letting your hands carry its honest, unsighted weight without needing to apologize for its lack of a pedigree. If you fall into a space of deep, heavy silence during a presentation, you rest in that stillness with radical transparency, letting your facial features go soft and your head pull back without needing to fake an authoritative alignment. You are no longer outsmarting your execution, you are allowing your presence to become alive. Let us return our attention to the immediate physical container of our bodies to see how this philosophical deconstruction operates within our lived anatomy. As you sit here, reading these words beneath the invisible pressure of your career's expectations, notice the absolute truth of non-hoarding operating within your own sensory apparatus. Every single sight that enters this room, the play of light across the desk, the dust motes dancing in the smart lighting, or the cold text on this screen is received by your eyes with an effortless, uncalculated grace. The eyes do not run out of their sockets to grab the visual data, they do not filter out the ordinary, unembossed shapes to preserve only the golden seals, they do not run a simulation to predict the next layout before it arrives. They simply sit back in the bone of the skull, deep, dark, and perfectly receptive, allowing the visual landscape to deliver its raw vibration onto the retina without an internal board review needing to approve the aesthetic scenery. The eyes trust the sight to arrive completely, and they trust the sight to vanish into nothingness the moment it passes, without trying to hoard a single image for a future presentation. This is the organic, non-reflective cadence we have forgotten. We are trying to live our lives with our internal jaw muscles and suboccipital roots constantly tensed for consumption, trying to manipulate our reputation, trying to project an expert identity, and trying to audit our qualifications before our choices have even cleared our hands. We are terrified of the flat, blank, and uncredentialed space where no performance is happening, the quiet gap where we are not being seen as an expert, not being seen as a student, and not being seen as anything at all. But it is precisely within that gap, within that spacious, uncalculating silence between our frameworks and our certifications, where our true liberation resides. It is the unmoving axis around which the entire frantic theater of the ego turns. When we learn how to inhabit that gap, how to drop our anchors into the clear water of the unwatched present, the hypervigilant hoarder dissolves like a shadow when the sun reaches its zenith. We are finally, truly, unshakably real. To step out of the hyperactive intellectual vault that has turned our actions into a bloodless training simulation, and enter the direct, experiential laboratory of somatic liberation, we must approach our own anatomy with the precise, non-conceptual eye of a master craftsman inspecting a bound instrument. Let us look back toward the image of the rusted hinge on the open gate, visualizing it not as an intellectual theory to be filed away in our collection of credentials, but as a literal energetic blockade occurring within our immediate jaw and the base of our skull. This hinge is our current state of professional exile, the hypervigilant muscle armor held permanently tight to intercept, censor, and redesign our spontaneous intuitive reality before it can touch the world. We are living with our masseter muscles and suboccipital joints locked into a state of chronic icy compression, terrified that if we let the metal bars drop for even a single presentation, the wild, uncredentialed gush of our original awareness will flood the room and ruin our reputation for expertise. The true practice of mental and somatic training is not about learning how to paint the rusted hinge with more conscious, certified mindfulness formulas, how to oil the academic machinery with advanced productivity frameworks, or how to use a deep breathing framework to make our execution sound more spiritually integrated. That would simply be the hypervigilant hoarder launching a new hyper-refined project of self-optimization to add to its portfolio of achievements. The training is the radical, immediate decision to step through the gate altogether, allowing its structure to crash into irrelevance through a systematic biological surrender of our muscular defenses. It is the willingness to sit perfectly still within the center of your own bones, allowing the accumulation engine to run completely out of fuel until the base of the skull and the muscles of the jaw naturally drop their guard, dissolve their rigid perimeters, and reclaim the wide, panoramic vastness of our primitive, uncalculating life force. This reclamation of our original authority requires a deeply physical retraining of our primary attention, a process that moves step by step through our sensory geography to reverse our lifetime of academic curation. The first pillar of this training is the deliberate unclamping of the jaw and ear root matrix. When we live as an escapist of the ideal response, the masseter muscles act as an internal security gatekeeper, pulling upward to block the vocal passage and trap our raw instinctual current before it can cross our teeth. To break this spell, we must grant ourselves the shocking, unfamiliar permission to let the deep root of the mouth go completely slack, heavy, and undefended. Let us practice this direct somatic thawing right now, without altering a single aspect of your current posture or shifting your eyes from this text. Take your attention entirely away from the logical meaning of these sentences and drop it into the literal floor of your mouth, right beneath the body of your tongue. Notice the deep, habitual tightness that sits at the very back of your jaw, where the mandible connects to the skull just beneath the root of your ears. As you allow your next exhalation to slip out through your slightly parted lips, consciously command the root of your jaw to untether itself. Let it go soft, flat, and wide like a large wet stone sinking into the dark mud of a riverbed. Let your lower jaw drop downward by a fraction of an inch, releasing the invisible clench in your masseter muscles that you have carried since your first school examination. Feel the immediate, cascading effect of this oral softening across your upper torso. The walls of your throat instantly widen, opening a broad, cavernous airway that stretches all the way from your collarbones to your soft palate. The vocal cords drop into a state of zero-tension rest, and the chronic, exhausting grip behind your chin completely dissolves. To the internal manager, this slack, open-mouthed state feels dangerously unintelligent, clumsy, and unprotected. It looks like a complete surrender of our professional authority. But to your biological organism, this is the first moment of authentic execution peace it has tasted in years. It is the physical statement that the credentialing board has been defunded, that the gates are open, and that your presence is finally allowed to be raw, uncertified, and completely real. As the jaw root melts, we can enter the second pillar of our practice, which is the technique of dropping the forward crane. The Hoarder software is fundamentally driven by an intense, straining physical posture that pulls the head ahead of the spine, trying to reach out and consume the next piece of information before the body can feel the weight of the present moment. To dissolve this high-velocity strain, we must intentionally pull our cognitive center back into alignment with the skeleton. Rest your awareness entirely upon the heavy, rounded base of your skull, where it sits upon the first cervical vertebra. Notice how your suboccipital muscles are automatically tensing, pulling your chin forward to grip the text and separate your head from the support of your torso. Now, without losing sight of these words, consciously allow your head to glide backward by half an inch, letting the weight of your brain drop directly down into the heavy, solid basket of your chest and pelvis. Imagine that the spine is an elegant stalk of bamboo, and your head is a light, hollow bloom sitting perfectly balanced upon its tip, requiring zero muscular effort to remain erect. From this rear balcony of your skeleton, allow the entire length of your spine to lengthen downward toward the earth. You are no longer leaning forward into the future with an intense, predatory grasp for data. You are sitting back and allowing the immediate gravity of the earth to hold your structure. Notice the immediate, profound neurological shift that accompanies this skeletal reception. The neck muscles relax, the continuous loop of survival anxiety flowing into your central nervous system dries up, and the frantic, hyper-focused panic of the internal student instantly evaporates into the wide open air. Your head is no longer a battering ram designed to break through curricula. It has returned to its original nature as a receptive antenna that hosts the present hour without needing to justify its position. From this state of wide skeletal hospitality, we can initiate the third pillar of our training, which is the practice of the uncredentialed presence. The perpetual student restricts its movements and thoughts to certified templates to ensure that no unexpected mistake can expose its vulnerability. To break this control, we must train our biology to allow our unsighted thoughts and raw intuitive currents to touch the room without a pedigree or a citation. As you sit in this room, balanced in your skeleton and soft at the root of your jaw, notice the exact texture of the doubt, the curiosity, or the brilliance that is currently vibrating within your chest cavity. Do not try to clean it, validate it with a theory, or back it up with an institutional reference. Simply allow your mind to host the thought exactly as it is, as a raw, anonymous happening that belongs to nobody but the current room. The next time you are called to speak or act in a professional or personal encounter, refuse to preface your statement with a citation of an expert, a mention of a book you read, or an assurance of your training credentials. Speak the truth of your immediate perception with a blunt, naked simplicity, letting the words fall from your lips without a safety net. To the conscious performer within you, this unvarnished delivery feels deeply dangerous and crude. But as the words leave your mouth, notice the immense physical thaw that occurs within your chest. By letting your raw insight pass through the world without a pedigree, you have cracked the iron vault. You have demonstrated to your nervous system that it does not need to be certified to be allowed to act, releasing a massive wave of trapped life force back into your career. This brings us to the fourth pillar of our mental cultivation, the training of the unchoreographed execution. The Hoarder software treats every choice every project plan, and every operational movement as an exam that must be passed with a perfect score. To break this mechanical possession, we must train ourselves to execute ordinary tasks from the wild, uncalculating intelligence of our immediate selves. The next time you are engaged in an active project and you feel the familiar, urgent reflex to scan your digital library for a multi-step checklist, a framework diagram, or an accredited protocol to guide your next step, consciously freeze your hands mid-air. Drop your awareness out of your thinking brain and sink it all the way down into the heavy, dark bones of your pelvis meeting the seat. Let your mind go completely blank, neutral, and empty of any academic strategy, allowing your instincts to hang loose like the senses of a tracking animal. Stay in this unvetted neutrality for 3 full heartbeats, refusing to supply your workspace with your habitual array of borrowed models. Then allow the action to happen from the raw momentum of your physical mass. Let your fingers strike the keys, let your pen mark the paper, or let your voice declare the direction with an unchoreographed, simple velocity. Do not polish the execution, do not try to make it look mindful or academically compliant. Let it carry the raw, blunt honesty of a creature resolving a problem through its immediate survival intelligence. You are training your mind to understand that you are not in a lecture hall, that your career is not an accreditation board, and that you are completely permitted to be an ordinary, self-authorized force, rather than a hypervigilant hoarder of social permissions. Finally, we must integrate downward migration into the way we meet the high-stakes impacts of our professional world, transforming our operational friction into the ultimate theater of somatic liberation. When you are sitting across from an authority figure, a high-value client, or a team in crisis, and they deliver an unscripted demand that triggers your imposter panic, catch the immediate, top-heavy reflex of your mind to sprint into the backstage archive room to find a certified methodology. In that exact split second of real-world impact, execute the practice of the uncredentialed pause. Lock the doors of your cognitive vault and refuse to let a single framework form behind your teeth. Instead, direct the intense laser of your attention down into the soles of your feet, meeting the floorboards, anchoring your entire historical skeleton into the heavy, unmoving ballast of the earth. Let your jaw rest like an open gate. Keep your posture aligned with gravity, and allow the raw, vibrating urgency of their demand to hit your undefended center like a wave of cold mountain air. Let your chest tighten if it needs to tighten. Let your face remain flat and unpolished. Force yourself to sit within the naked, unscripted silence of the crisis for 5 long heartbeats, without offering a single explanatory methodology, a single academic citation, or a single certified assurance. Then, when the silence has completely stripped you of your borrowed identities, allow your voice to rise straight from the deep cavern of your soft, dropped belly, carrying the raw, blunt facts of your immediate intuitive authority. Speak without complex jargon, without the trendy acronyms of the latest masterclass, and without a single word borrowed from an institutional textbook. Say to them, with the unvarnished simplicity of a stone crashing through a glass screen, "The existing frameworks do not fit this problem. We are going to build the answer right here on the floor." Notice the extraordinary, thunderous impact of this raw utterance upon the architecture of the crisis. By refusing to meet their storm with the polished shield of a borrowed certificate, you have pulled them out of the lecture hall and forced them to confront a real, sovereign, and self-authorized human life. You have shattered the performance of preparation, opening up a vast, sacred, and entirely uncalculated space where genuine innovation can finally drop its armor and meet in the deep, unwatched courtyard of immediate reality. This is the mental training that converts our communicative and professional imprisonment into an immediate, irreversible return to our original sufficiency. It does not ask you to become an uneducated ascetic to discard your high intelligence, or to stop studying the exquisite details of your craft. It demands only that you have the radical, animal courage to catch the internal hoarding engine the moment it attempts to intercept your execution, and to make the sovereign, disruptive choice to trust the open courtyard over the rusted hinge. Every time you melt your masseter muscles, pull your head back into the alignment of gravity. Allow an unsighted thought to touch the room and execute from the uncalculating weight of your immediate cells. You are fracturing the porcelain cage of your imposter syndrome. You are stepping out of the classroom of your endless preparation, returning your voice to the fertile earth of its native power, and discovering that your true authority in this universe has never depended on your ability to accumulate framed paper, but has always resided in your magnificent, unvetted freedom to be completely, unforgettably real. When the heavy scaffolding of our internal library is finally starved of its frantic adrenaline-fueled fuel, and the relentless rhythm of our academic preparation grinds to a definitive halt, we do not tumble into a void of chaotic professional failure. We do not lose our high intellect, our hard-earned skills, or our natural capacity to bring deep analytical clarity to our craft. Instead, we drop directly into the vast panoramic sanctuary of the absolute sufficiency of the ordinary spacer profound. Cell-level transformation where our jaw and our neck no longer need to run a continuous loop of defensive credentials to secure our right to act. Our physical form becomes like an ancient, deeply rooted oak tree hosting a fluid seasonal landscape. The storms of marketplace competition, the winds of public criticism, and the cold fogs of operational uncertainty continue to sweep across our branches, but because our skeletal structure has aligned itself with the unmoving center of gravity and our jaw has dropped its defensive clench, our biology no longer freezes in terror. We face the demands of the hour with a pristine, mirror-like clarity, remaining completely porous and wide open at the base of the skull, while our presence rests in the deep, uncalculating authority of the earth. This is the grand, unchoreographed homecoming of the perpetual student. We are no longer living our lives from the narrow, top-heavy vault behind our eyes, treating our credentials as a sophisticated armor that must be continuously extended before we allow ourselves to take a single step into the open air. When we look past the rusted hinge on the open gate, our relationship with our own innate intelligence undergoes a quiet, total revolution. We discover the immense, velvety relief of being completely uncertified, completely unmapped, and entirely heavy in our own skin. We stop treating our career as an endless series of unpassed prerequisites. The breath plunges effortlessly into the dark, cavernous depths of our wide chest and soft belly, moving like a slow, underground river that washes away the stale sediment of our long-held imposter fears. Every muscle fiber in our face and head takes its first genuine breath of relief in decades, bathed in the deep neural signal of absolute existential safety that arises only when an organism understands that the classroom has dissolved, the accreditation board has been dismissed, and our raw humanity is fully allowed to inhabit the courtyard. We begin to execute from the deep, resonant ballast of our roots, allowing our choices to carry the immediate, vibrating texture of our cells without needing to back them up with an institutional citation. We look at the parameters of our projects, the faces of our clients, and the quiet thresholds of our daily tasks, not as exams to be passed, but as the raw, innocent, and beautiful elements of a shared reality touching our soft sensory apparatus. We meet the challenges of our industries with a spacious, expectation-free gaze, dropping our flawless presentation of expertise to let our head sit back upon our spine, passive, panoramic, and perfectly receptive. We have no pedigree left to defend, no specialized badges left to broadcast, and no fragile intellectual monument left to protect from the messy, unpolished friction of real action. We are no longer disembodied computer terminals exchanging immaculate frameworks. From behind a textbook we are fully incarnated, fully uncredentialed and fully real, resting together in the deep sanctuary of our shared unvarnished existence. Let us carry with us the ultimate silent transmission left by the ancient trackers of the spirit, a timeless wisdom that has survived the rise and fall of 1,000 overcredentialed cultures. Your true value to this universe does not depend on your ability to manufacture a perfect resume, but resides in your radical willingness to be completely here, undefended, porous, and nakedly exposed to the raw weight of the immediate hour. The authority you have spent your entire adult life running at full velocity to acquire through your endless training hours has always been located directly behind your locked jaw, within the very courtyard that has been standing wide open and empty across every single moment of your silent preparation. We possess an inherent, invulnerable capacity to host any operational crisis without breaking our vessel, remaining as spacious and non-resistant as an open sky that allows the thunder to roll across its hills without needing to verify its institutional license. We are not the sterile, managed reservoir of our social expectations. We are the wild, continuous mountain stream of pure awareness that remains forever flowing, forever uncalculating, and forever complete. The desktop screens will continue to flash their digital modules in the high-end offices around you. The professional marketplaces will keep demanding their curated arrays of certificates, and the unpredictable variables of real life will keep delivering their impacts without asking your permission. The rusted hinge we have oiled and intellectualized for a lifetime is lying shattered and useless on the floor, completely stripped of its defensive magic. The current hour is wide open, a vast, unchoreographed field of execution that does not need to be certified, does not need to be vetted, and does not require a single gold seal to be completely enough. As you sit here in the wide, echoless space of this landing, feeling your jaw root rest flat and wide like a wet stone and your head pull back into the quiet alignment of gravity, let the final question collapse the last intellectual vault of your mind. If you truly had the radical animal courage to trust that your uncredentialed presence possesses an absolute, unshakable right to act without an institutional stamp of approval, what would happen if you simply stepped through the gate of your endless preparation right now, let the scaffolding of your certificates drop to the floor, and allowed yourself to meet the next real-world demand with the raw, unsighted, and beautiful authority of your immediate, uncalculating awareness?